Today we're going to be talking about brake pads, one of the most important components on your vehicle. So where are disc pads located? They're located behind the wheel assembly. What are they? Effectively, they're a metal plate with friction material bonded to them. The type of friction material will vary, however, they all do the same job. They basically clamp onto the disc rotor and slow the vehicle down. As we use our brakes, the brake pads do wear out. They do undergo a fair bit of heat and a fair bit of punishment. So the friction material over time wears down. Here's an example of a new set of pads where we've got plenty of friction material. As they wear down, the friction material disappears and it comes down closer and closer to the metal backing where we don't want it to touch the disc rotor. So during services, your technician or your mechanic will inspect the condition of the brake pads and advise of their functionality and also their service life. So the disc pads are located behind the wheel assembly and they run on the disc rotor. So when your technician or your mechanic is servicing your vehicle, a routine maintenance is to inspect the condition of those disc pads, and those disc pads over time do wear out. So if the friction material is worn down sufficiently, they will recommend a replacement. The disc pads do run on a rotor, a disc rotor, and effectively they clamp on the disc rotor. So if we're going to replace the disc pad with a nice new flat surface, we want to ensure that the disc pad runs on a nice flat surface so they can work at their optimum. Disc rotors do over time basically wear out as well. They do develop grooves and ripples. So what we want to do is we're fitting new disc pads, brake pads. We need to make sure the surface is even, so we can machine these. So it may be recommended that we machine or skim the discs. If the discs are too far gone, we will need to replace the disc rotors, and that way the surface that the new pad is running on is true and correct and we get optimum braking. So when your pads require replacement, there are different types of pads available. Normally we'll make sure we follow what the OEM or the factory recommends. However, there are variables in the pad material. So there's more metallic type pads, there's ceramic type pads, there's organic pads, and your technician will have that discussion based on your driving style and, for example, your location. If you're on the top of a mountain and you're doing lots of braking, or if you're towing a caravan, you may require a different composition of brake pad or friction material. So our brake pads are located behind the wheel assemblies. How do they work? Effectively, if we put our foot on the brake, we transmit hydraulic force, or fluid transmits hydraulic force down through the brake lines down to our caliper. So our caliper assembly has the disc pads mounted inside there, and what they do is they basically force or clamp against the disc rotor, and we retard or slow the vehicle down. So how do we know if our brake pads are worn out and need replacing? Sometimes very difficult as an operator because they can wear down and we're none the wiser because the brakes still seem to operate okay. So that's why it's really important to have them inspected at your regular service intervals. However, sometimes they do present as issues when we put our foot on the brake. We may get noise. So it may get a grinding noise coming from outside when we apply the brakes. We might get a squealing noise, which may indicate a bit of dust. However, it might indicate that down to the wear indicators, which is telling the driver or the operator, hey, there's something wrong with these disc pads or disc brakes. Some of the other issues you may encounter are when you're applying the brake, you may have a pulsation or a vibration through the brake pedal. Or alternatively, you may have a vibration or a shimmy through the steering wheel. All those will be a good indication that your brakes need some kind of attention. So due to the serious nature of the braking systems and it functioning correctly on the road, we recommend that only a qualified technician or mechanic do the repairs on braking systems and you don't try this type of work at home. So till next time, happy motoring and safe motoring.